Hi folks, Richie here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my 10 favourite uses for chemical hand warmers. Roll the intro. Okay folks, so these chemical hand warmers are pretty standard fare these days. Many of you will know about them. Many of you will have used them. And hopefully many of you will already know some of the uses that I'm going to mention to you today. The way these things work is you pop them out of the packet and the chemicals inside them react with the air, with the oxygen in the air, and that causes an exothermic reaction, creating heat. And obviously these, depending on which ones you buy, this heat lasts for varying amounts of times. My particular favorite brand of these are called Hot Hands hand warmers, which are in that orange packet that I just showed you, and they claim to last for about 10 hours. They don't quite last that long, certainly not at the full heat output anyway, but they are very good and certainly adequate for if you start them off late at night. They're certainly adequate to get you through a full night until the next morning. So I'm going to share with you a couple of very obvious uses for these, and then I'm going to show you a few that aren't quite so obvious maybe. So stick around, here we go. Okay, so use one for hand warmers is the most obvious one. They're called hand warmers. You can use them to keep your hands warm. Duh. I've done that in a couple of different ways. Sometimes I put them down inside my gloves. Sometimes I put them in my pockets and just walk with my hands in my pockets. But either way, for keeping your hands warm on a cold day, they're great. Use 2 for hand warmers is another fairly obvious one really. You can use them for keeping your feet warm. Now, you can actually buy versions of these that are shaped to fit inside the toe of a shoe. And they're pretty good as well. They're not the most comfortable things to have underneath your toes as you're walking along, but if you can get them to sit on top of your toes, then they're absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't recommend putting them inside your sock, because there have been reports of people getting chemical burns from them. Whether that was a particular brand, I don't know. I read a report of someone having used a hand warmer to keep their feet warm, that the hand warmer was against their feet. There was no report on what brand of hand warmer these were, but they did get quite itchy, irritable chemical burns from the reaction going on inside the hand warmers. So just be aware of that. Try and keep them outside your socks if you can. But that's it. Use number 2 is for keeping your toes warm. Okay, so the next use I've got for hand warmers is directly related to the one I just said, the keeping your feet warm, but this is keeping your feet warm at night. So when you get down inside your sleeping bag, quite often your feet can be pressed against the bottom of your sleeping bag, which compresses all of the filling up, the insulation in your sleeping bag, and that can reduce its effectiveness, which can lead to you getting cold toes. So what I'd like to do on a cold night is I wear 2 pairs of socks, and I put one of these hand warmers in between the pairs of socks, just to keep my feet warm all night, and that works an absolute treat. So use number 3, between 2 pairs of socks while you're sleeping. Okay, so the 4th use for hand warmers is also a sleep related one, and that is that you can pop a couple of them, or 3 or even 4 of them, in your sleeping bag once you've got it out of your stuff sack, and put it in your tent or your hammock or wherever you're sleeping. Pop a couple of them inside your sleeping bag to sort of preheat it, get a bit of warmth through the insulation, which incidentally can encourage the insulation to loft a little more efficiently, and of course leaves all that nice warmth inside for when you get in a bit later on, at which point you can put a couple of them in your socks, or transfer them to the outside of your sleeping bag, even under your sleep pad, I guess you could. And that's it. Number 4, preheating your sleeping bag. Number 5 is one that's not immediately obvious to everyone, but if you're out in minus temperatures and you have limited amounts of space in your tent, meaning you can't keep your water inside the tent with you, for example, you can use hand warmers to stop your water freezing overnight. You just put one of them down wherever you're keeping your water, pop your water over the top of it, and it'll just put enough warmth through the liquid to stop it freezing. So number 5, stopping your drinking water from freezing. Okay, number 6 is a good one, and I have Jiffy Myers to thank for this, so thanks Jiffy for putting me onto this idea. You can actually use it to improve the efficiency of your gas canisters. Now, if you crack open one of your hand warmers, you'll notice that your gas canister, if you use a stove that uses a gas canister, generally has a little hollow in the bottom of it, a dome shape in the bottom of the can. Now, if you pop one of your hand warmers underneath that, it'll just stop the gas from getting really cold. This is a cold weather tip, obviously. It'll stop that gas from getting really cold, which can decrease the pressure inside the can and cause you to have some problems with getting a real good warm burn on your stove. So pop a hand warmer underneath your gas canister, it'll warm the gas slightly, and that will allow your stove to burn more efficiently. Number 7 is keeping your electronics warm. Did you know that rechargeable batteries really hate getting cold? In fact, if you keep them at a low temperature, down in single figures for a long period of time, they'll actually discharge. And when you come to put them in your camera or your drone or whatever it is that you're keeping the spare batteries for, you're going to get a nasty surprise, because there's not going to be much power left in them. So, number 7 is you can pop a hand warmer in a bag, put all your batteries in there, and it'll keep them nice and warm and make sure they retain as much of their charge as possible. As an extension to that idea, Lucy Quinton, who is one of the admin over on the Wild Camping UK Facebook group, has started a business called Quintcraft, and she has started making some fantastic handmade products out of Hilleberg fabric. And she's extremely talented at what she does. One of the things that she has recently been granted a patent on is an insulated bag, an insulated pouch that you can keep electronics in, you can keep your food bags in as the dehydrated meals are rehydrating and all that sort of thing. So my suggestion would be, get yourself over to Quintcraft, have a chat with Lucy about getting yourself one of these insulated pouches, and keep your batteries and electronics in there, and pop a hand warmer in there for good measure. So number 7 would be keeping your electronics warm to stop your batteries from discharging. Okay, use number 8 for hand warmers. You can use them to dry out wet socks and boots overnight. With socks, what I'd recommend is to pop a hand warmer inside each one and hang them if you can. With boots, keep the boots somewhere where there's a little bit of airflow but not too much, and pop a hand warmer inside the toe box of each one. Now, I wouldn't recommend that as your regular method of drying out boots, because manufacturers tend to recommend that they dry in ambient temperatures these days. But if you're at the end of a long day of hiking, you've got to put your boots on the next morning, it's a good way of getting some of the moisture out of them at least by the next morning, and they might just even be a little bit warmer to put on to save you having that horrible experience of putting your feet into wet boots. So number 8 is drying out socks and boots. Okay, number 9 is a great one for anyone that uses a digital camera, in particular one with an interchangeable lens, DSLR, something like that. And we've all been there. You take a photo, You framed it up nicely, you think, oh, that's great. You look at it on the screen, and oh my God, there's a great big foggy patch, either right in the middle or up in one corner or something like that. And that's because you've possibly had the camera out and the lens out in the cold air for too long, and condensation has formed on the lens. And it is a pain in the neck. Now, you can buy USB powered electronic lens warmers, which go around the outside of a camera lens, but they're quite expensive. So what I do is I get a piece of tubular bandage or an old sock that I've cut the bottom off to make a tube. I put that tubular bandage, or elastic part of the sock, over my lens, and I pop a hand warmer inside that on the underside of the lens. And what that does is it just increases the air temperature inside the lens and inside the camera to stop any condensation forming on the outer surfaces of your lens and camera. It doesn't cause so much heat that it distorts the lens inside, but it does work absolutely brilliantly for stopping fogging up of camera lenses. Use number 9 for hand warmers is to stop your camera from fogging up. And use number 10 of my favourite uses for chemical hand warmers is one that really made me go, what? Really? I was reading an article and someone just casually mentioned that after dropping, I think it was their phone in a puddle, they took it home and put it in a plastic bag with some rice and a used hand warmer. And I read it again, and it said rice and a used hand warmer. Now, I was familiar with rice, but I was curious about why the used hand warmer. So I left a comment on this post just saying, used hand warmer, ? Why? And they said they are absolutely brilliant at absorbing moisture. They're a little bit like silica pouches that you get in new electrical equipment. So you get yourself a used hand warmer and you pop it into anything that you want to keep dry. So maybe in with your Christmas decorations up in the loft, or in with something you've dropped in a puddle and you're trying to dry it out, or anything along those lines at all. A used hand warmer will absorb all of the oxygen, all of the moisture in the air, and will help you to get that dried out, which I think is absolutely bloody brilliant. I had no idea. I haven't tried it yet, but now I've done some research on that. I have read it in a few different places that it is the case, so I would definitely recommend giving it a go. A used hand warmer to help you dry out any waterlogged electronics. Okay, bonus use. And this is a bit of a divisive one. A lot of people say no, they don't produce enough heat for that use, is to help keep your food and drinks warm. I have to say, if you use insulated cups like the Life Venture mug or anything like that, then of course your drinks are going to stay warm fairly efficiently anyway. And if you've got any kind of insulated pouch like I mentioned in number 7 there, then that's going to keep your food warm quite nicely anyway. But if you've only got a single skin mug, then you could rest that on a hand warmer. You could pop one down inside your pouch with your food, or maybe even sit your food on top of one of these hand warmers while it's rehydrating. So that's bonus use number 11, and that's helping to keep your food and drink warm. And that's it, folks. That's my 11 uses for chemical hand warmers. I hope you've enjoyed that. Do you have any uses for them that I haven't mentioned today? If so, pop them in the comments below. Let us know about them. If they're good, I'll try and give them a mention on a future film. And yeah, I'd be happy to hear from you with any questions or comments you've got about any of the tips that I've given you in this film. Folks, that's it from me today. If you've enjoyed this little film, please give it a thumbs up. please leave me a comment or question below if you have any, and don't forget to go and consider subscribing to the channel. But for now, all that remains for me to say is thank you so much for watching, and this is Richie for Wild Astro, signing off.